Now, welcome to another weekend ramble, where this time the topic is going to be what exactly?
It's going to be a weird theory I came up with for Ahsoka.
Oh boy.
Yes.
That's why you
because
didn't want to
that's
tell me
what
before
I
we
do.
started.
I do this weird off-the-wall theories. I mean, we know now that Baylan is a Order 66 survivor, a Jedi who went into hiding and then became a mercenary.
Yep.
He's got the orange saber, as well as he must have found his Force Sith little Padawan along the way, his apprentice, his Padawan.
Who
She's
seems
got the
very
braid.
angry, yeah.
She's got the angry squirrel energy, yes. What if his goal is to use the world between worlds to prevent Order 66? Like, it would make him like a Thanos type villain. A villain that has their certain nobility of presence because they believe in their cause 100% that what they're doing is right. He believes, in my theory, I have to make sure I specify, theory, that
based on just your own, yeah.
Based on my own random thoughts that
yeah.
I think could be cool.
Yep.
But what if he believes 100% going back to the past, stopping Order 66 would save the universe? Would save people he loved and cared about within the Jedi Order, his friends, his family, his community.
Well, he would be a Jedi, so at the time. So he wouldn't really have, quote unquote, friends and family so much. He'd have his fellow Jedi.
But he's looking back from years of living under the Empire's rule, watching Order 66 happen, becoming a mercenary, doing the bad things, going, you know what, I could go back and I could change these things.
Okay, now you're on a better track, because if he was forced to be a mercenary to just, if he's not just like a mercenary just to survive, but kind of Bad Batch mercenary where he's taking missions and he's kind of coming to the conclusion, yeah, I'm surviving, but the galaxy's getting worse and I don't like what I'm kind of forced to become. Not that that's the Bad Batch per se,
and
but
like even coming out the other side, he's seeing that, okay, we defeated them, all right, but the universe doesn't feel like a good place quite yet. There's remnants of the Empire everywhere, and lawlessness, and things are bad. Could he perhaps think he could use the world between worlds by studying the ancient Jedi temples and such to fix the problems by stopping the Jedi from ever disappearing?
The problem with your theory right now is, I mean, in the present tense of the show, in the mandoverse, everything is quote-unquote kind of okay.
But it's not okay. Not from where we think he is coming from.
Well, yeah, but the Empire is now gone. We know he would probably...
But the Jedi are still gone.
He would probably have heard of Luke Skywalker. We don't know where he's been or exactly what he's done. But a lot of people apparently haven't heard of Luke, despite the fact he'll be like this legend who can't stand it later on. But it's a very interesting idea. I wouldn't say it's impossible, as much as the problem is there needs to be a reason why, they got through the Empire and he's still not happy. He still thinks something is very wrong.
Because the Jedi Order is gone. Because 10,000 somehow Jedi Knights all disappeared. Maybe he thinks that is a problem.
So your idea here is he doesn't think the Jedi can recover and they need to be recovered.
What if he also thinks, now after going through this time period, being hunted by Inquisitors or whatever he's gone through in these times, what if he thinks that, or he realizes the Jedi were corrupt? That they were possibly, well, as we know that they are, they kind of weren't corrupted, but they weren't
corrupt as much
pawns
as they were
of the government. What if he decided somewhere along the lines in his mercenary thinking, his knight thinking, that maybe the Jedi should have just been more in control of the galaxy? Maybe that they could have stepped up and they could have cut down the government and said, no, do things this way. This is the right way to do things, and possibly put the Jedi in control of the universe. I mean, this is somebody who's lived through a dark times and maybe realizes they had the power to change things, but they didn't.
He's got to know that would be a hard sell to go back in time, because they're not going to necessarily... I mean, it depends on what he can show them, what he can convince them of, but it would be a hard sell to go back in time and be like, hey Mace, hey Yoda, hey gang, we're all messed up, we got to take...
But he also holds the cards
even more control?
Of knowing, of the knowledge that has gone, that they have in the future. He knows who Vader was. He knows who the Emperor was.
Well, we don't know that he knows who Vader was. That's a jump.
It got out in the universe, remember, in the
Leia
book.
That's years later. That's closer to the sequels.
Okay. But he did know who the Emperor was.
Yes. That's a big one, yes.
Coming back in time and stopping Order 66, possibly even saving Anakin from his fall.
I mean, to go back in time before the Clone Wars began and to somehow offer proof that Palpatine is the Sith Lord who's kind of been hanging out. I mean, they don't know again, you go back to Phantom Menace, which one was destroyed, the Master or the Apprentice. So if you could go back to shortly after that and be like, hey, Maul was nothing. There's a Sith Lord out there. I know exactly who it is. He's going to take over the government. He's going to lead us into war and ruin. I can stop that.
We can stop that and maybe convince him at the same time that maybe the Jedi need to be the ones who seize control. That maybe they need to be the ones who are helping to lead from a stronger position and not just become more government pawns.
I'm liking your theory until that. I don't know that makes a ton of sense.
Well, depending on his strength and what he decides to do. I mean, he's a harder individual. It looks like he's more factual, more cut to the chase, it kind of seems. What if he cuts down the Jedi Council and assumes control himself?
That's a beast right there.
I want to kind of go into a crazy theory. I told you it was crazy.
No, it's fun, and that's what everybody needs to know. We're not implying that we truly and really think this is gonna. It's a fun video. It's a good discussion.
What if they are less peacekeepers and more the peace army of the galaxy? What if we get led into a path where almost Jedi are acting as inquisitors, like all of them, in a way that they are now the government. They are the judge, jury, the executioner. They will do what must be done to stop corruption and to keep the galaxy in line.
Well, what's interesting, not to kind of derail that thought, but if he has had access to the world between worlds, or somehow gains access to it and sees the future, because maybe he's at this point where it's like, okay, yeah, things are turning out well. He goes into the world between worlds, he sees the future, he sees Rey's Jedi Order, and sees that it never recovers. Mm-hmm. I mean, do I think they do that? I mean, that's what we've all kind of hoped for, or not all of us, but a lot of people have kind of hoped for a reason to kind of retcon the sequels, for a character to try to do it. So, I mean, that would be the only way I would really see that he would try to go back, because he would, because even if things are bad right now,
depends on what he's currently lived through, which we don't have a full story about what he's lived through, what he's going with now, how close is his association with Thrawn? Does he believe they're on the verge of the Empire coming and seizing control again?
Well, yeah, I mean, he might know what's really... He could have gone to Exegol, for example. He might know what's really happening on Exegol, and maybe no one will believe him, because...
He might know, hey, the Emperor's coming back.
It's
we
not
haven't
only...
defeated him. He's still there. The prophecy of the Chosen One failed.
Ooh, those are... That
could be something he could believe and want to go back and change.
Yeah, because the thing is, in the current canon, Palpatine is working on the Death Star Destroyer fleet, whatever you like, the Exegol fleet, the Final Order, pick your poison when it comes to the name. He's working on that as far back as Empire Strikes Back time period. Vader actually goes to Exegol and seizes the fleet, so... I mean, whether or not they're going to take that into account or just kind of ignore that because it's silly, I don't know. But nevertheless, he could see the Final Order... If we're playing by, sequel trilogy stuff, which we supposedly are, he could see that, and that could be the reason he thinks, well, we don't have the Jedi to stop this.
Right. And maybe he thinks that we have to have a change to the Jedi Order in order to build up their numbers and to build up their skills and brace the galaxy for what could be coming if they can't stop him in the past. And what's interesting is this theory almost makes Ahsoka, is she more, it puts her in a hard position, because she's the one who has to stop him from going to the world between worlds then in this, rumory story of mine.
Because then she would have,
she has to stop him from destroying the present.
What makes it interesting for Ahsoka is if he goes back and changes all that, he's changing her history. He's changing Anakin's history. He could change Anakin from falling to the dark side.
Which is what is interesting, because it gives us such a hard choice.
Yeah,
because she knows she could save Anakin.
Yeah. And change her life entirely as well.
But does this now mean Luke and Leia? Do they still exist? What does what could it change in the future depending on when he goes back to?
Yeah, it's like the Iron Man thing in Endgame, right? Like if they change everything in the past, he gets rid of his daughter. That's not a trade he's willing to make, which you can understand his point of view on that. So it's the same kind of deal. If you go back in time and you change everything that... And look, we're talking about time travel, a lot of things I don't love in Star Wars, but
I know.
We're trying to have fun here. Again, don't get to the comments like, oh, you're just theorizing and
it is
getting us.
Just
we are.
Theory. It's a crazy theory that I'm inventing right now.
Fun, stupid speculation. So please don't get all upset. But no, you would have an interesting idea there. You put Ahsoka in an interesting position. Do you, she also believes that the future could be troubled, and we see her talking to Huyang about restarting the Jedi Order. So maybe she's now. That could be like a final scene in the season, right? Mm-hmm. After she has this conflict. We've heard about her also seeing visions of the past with Anakin and trying to see if, she could have saved him somehow on Mustafar and all these crazy things.
It puts her in a really tough conundrum, which is why I like this theory.
Yeah, because you want to challenge the character, right? You don't want her just having to go around and solve things, and she's great, and she fixes the galaxy.
It makes everything not so black and white, which is what I like. It puts her in a position of going, look at all the good I could do, look at all the changes we could make, but is it right to go back in history and try and change the past?
That's the question.
What new horrors do you bring about by trying to change the past?
It's that, would you go back in time and, kill Hitler as a baby kind of thing? Sure, you perhaps stop World War II. I mean, you still got other problems, right? Stalin is still there and stuff.
Well, does stopping him stop things like this war? It changes it, but it may not prevent it.
Yeah, you may just end up with a different war. Like, go to the Hitler example. You may just end up with a totally different war, and more people could die in that war, theoretically, which would be difficult considering the number of people who died in
But possibly if destiny exists, then another could just rise to fill his shoes.
Yeah, exactly. You don't, like I said, you don't know that changing the past makes things better. You have this horrible event, which you could theoretically prevent, but you don't know what comes about instead of it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the interesting theory that sprung into my head and I wanted to talk about.
Well, World Between Worlds almost seems like a given.
But would Ahsoka be fighting to get back into the World Between Worlds, or does it make sense that she could be stopping someone from getting in there?
I don't think she has any reason.
Could it be Baylan, now that we know he's an Order 66 survivor, turned mercenary, the orange lightsaber, which maybe doesn't imply he's dark side, but maybe that he's not in a good way?
He may completely regret everything he's done as a mercenary. He may regret everything he's done, all these choices. He's become this person. Mm-hmm. He can look back and see that when I was a Jedi, I was a good person. And if I could go back and stop this war from happening, Order 66 from happening and becoming this mercenary, I could stop myself from ever becoming this.
Mm-hmm.
And that be...
He could save the galaxy.
Yeah, that could be all that matters to him. It's not even so much saving the galaxy as much as it's kind of saving his soul. He sees that maybe he cares a great deal about his Padawan, and he's like, well, if I go back and change things, I can still find her and I can train her in the ways of a Jedi.
What if she's his daughter?
It could be, too. I think that's a strong possibility, actually.
Well, they have different last names, don't they?
It could be as grandiose as saving the galaxy, or it could be as personal as just saving myself or my daughter or whatever it is, even though, again, you have that problem of going back and changing her birth, most likely.
Right.
But who knows? Maybe he takes her through the World Between Worlds and she exists in the past.
Well, it's probably not his daughter. They have different last names.
Unless
Dave's messing with us, naming them after wolves.
Not Dave.
Not Dave.
If you're going to use the World Between Worlds, which I'd be okay if they didn't. Again, not a fan of time travel.
They are.
But make it interesting. Don't just make it generic.
No, that's why I like my random thoughts.
Don't just make, I'm going to use the World Between Worlds to take over the galaxy for myself. No. I mean, not that we can't...
They're trying to use it for in my head, trying to use it for a noble purpose, but is that something that you should still do?
Again, I don't think all villains need to be sympathetic. Sometimes you can have a Palpatine who's just a bad dude for bad reasons, and there's no sad story. Don't ask for it; you might get it. But I am okay when you have the more Thanos villains too, the ones who have, at least in their own mind, they are trying to fix something and
trying to do what is right by doing something that is wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Interesting theory, probably dead wrong.
Because it puts Ahsoka into a moral quandary, which is what I liked the most about this theory. Because is what he's doing right? Is what he's doing wrong? We don't have any way of knowing. Ahsoka has to make that decision. Does she think what he's doing is right and wrong, and why does she think that way?
Well, yeah, she could... I mean, imagine if she does access the World Between Worlds and could see what happens if he does go back and change it, and she sees this memory of... because we've heard... I don't know if it's 100% confirmed, but Hayden Christensen is supposed to be in this. So what if she goes back and she's in the World Between Worlds and she sees this alternate reality with her and Anakin and they're sitting on the council together and everything is great.
Or she sees him getting to embrace his children with Padme by his side.
Yeah, well, theoretically...
Maybe he leaves the Order for his family.
Now that would be interesting. I know there's a billion things you can do when it comes to time travel, and 999,999,999 of them are usually bad. But if you can get that one, you're in a good boat.
All right. Well, that's kind of all I had from my crazy weekend ramble topic.
All right. It was a fun one.
I'll probably end up with a bunch more weird off-the-wall theories that won't prove to be true, but I feel have interesting talking points nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah. And just remember, we're not saying we think this is how it's going to go.
This isn't even like a full-on prediction.
No,
it's an off-the-wall guess, which would make an interesting what-if video for you. Just what would you do if you could go back in time and stop Order 66? if you could go back and stop Palpatine before this happened.
Yeah.
And what would that change?
All right, well, that is all we got for this time. So now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell us what you think of our little theory, or Naboo's theory, I should say. And let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.